Hello everyone, welcome back to Not It's a Wonderful Podcast, even though you are finding this show on the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed. This is a new tiny little series in the run-up to Avengers Endgame. I realised that, well, I hadn't seen all the MCU films, and maybe that's kind of bad in some people's eyes. So, what this little thing is going to be is I think there are 6 weeks left until Endgame comes out, and there are 6 MCU movies that I have never seen. So, each week we are going to show me one of them and see how I feel about that, see what I think see how I think it ties into the movies that I have seen, and see if it gives me more of an idea on certain characters that I ultimately now only have a surface level knowledge to. But, like I alluded to before, this is on the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed, but it's not Nolan Dean on the other side, as it usually is. In fact, well, not always, actually, because there was that one weird episode where Brandon Hanna was the guest host, and that was very fun. But no, it's not Nolan Dean. It is instead the person who's forcing me to watch all these Phase 1, in fact, entirely Phase 1, I think, MCU movies. It's Jeannine the Machine.
Hello.
Hello. Are we excited to be... Are you excited at the fact that I'm actually watching these? Because you were shocked when I told you.
Yes, I'm very excited to make you do anything you don't want to do.
That's a very cruel thing to say.
You know, it's all from a place of love.
Yes, that is, yeah, I'm sure it is. Not from a place of absolute hatred at all. But yeah, today, obviously, we are starting, well, maybe not obviously, but we are starting with Iron Man. Because I've never seen Iron Man, Jeannine.
Craziness.
Up until I watched it for this particular recording. I know everybody has literally probably just gone, well, where on earth have you been for the last 12 years or 10 years? Or
so why didn't you explain why you haven't seen Iron Man as of yet?
Do you want me to explain my convoluted approach to watching the MCU?
Yes.
Being that the first time I watched an MCU film was Captain America: First Avenger in a drive-in movie theater in California. The second MCU film I watched was Age of Ultron. When some friends wanted to go and watch Age of Ultron at the cinema, and I went with them.
So this was before even seeing the original Avengers.
Oh yeah. No, I think I only watched Avengers. No, when did I watch Avengers? I don't know. It was after a lot of them, though. Like Phase 2 is what I know from, basically. But I've watched most of them. I think the first one I actually took myself to the cinema to see was Civil War. So.
And I'm over here polishing my shame bell.
Well, yes, ring the shame bell all you want. I deserve it all. And then, yeah. So Civil War is what I took myself to go to see. And then since then, I have seen them all in normal release order. The movies that have been released since then. But yeah, like, the other ones that I have seen are just like completely random, dotted about. I have seen them, but not in any sort of order. And the ones we are doing for this particular little series are Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, and Thor the Dark World.
And The Incredible Hulk.
And The Incredible Hulk. Which, yeah, so I've
You're not the first person to forget that movie.
Any of those. It's because The Incredible Hulk is... Does it exist, Jeannine?
It does.
And you like The Incredible Hulk, don't you?
I do.
Therefore, I am looking forward to watching that just to hear what you have to say on it.
There's some good stuff in there. I'm not lauding it as some wonderful movie, but there are some good things in there.
Do you laud Iron Man as a wonderful movie?
I do. That was actually my favorite movie in the MCU for a long time.
Up until?
Until probably Civil War.
Okay, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So it's beating out like Winter Soldier?
I did love Winter Soldier, but it still was number one for me.
It's beating out Guardians 1?
Yes.
It's any Avengers movie?
Because I feel like the arc was done the best in that movie.
In Iron Man?
The character setup was done the best in Iron Man.
See, what I found weird about, Iron Man the movie is Tony Stark is incredibly unlikable, I think.
Really?
Especially in the first half of this movie.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to think, but I think you're supposed to get layers of likability, and you got none of that?
I got some of that, but I don't think I got as much of it as a lot of people seem to. Like, I know, obviously, from watching a lot of a lot of MCU movies that came after, that people love Iron Man, and he's never been one that I necessarily gravitated towards. And like I said as well, I haven't seen the first two Thors, but I know I loved Thor from the first time I saw Thor. So in Age of Ultron it would have been.
Now seeing Iron Man, does that impact your feelings towards him at all?
I think it makes me realise that he enjoys being Iron Man. Certainly more earlier on. Whereas, I think Captain America's being Captain America purely because he's got a lot of heart, and Thor's Thor because of his birthright and everything else. But Iron Man was something that Tony Stark created for himself to get himself out of a particular dangerous situation. He's clearly a very intelligent human being, but I likened him to Bruce Wayne if Bruce Wayne didn't care about people.
So you didn't feel that arc at all?
I don't think that Iron Man cares about people, which is a weird thing to say considering what happens in like Civil War.
Yeah, but even in this movie, like, you saw him go and try to save people and stop his weapons from doing bad things. He didn't have to do that.
I mean, that's true. Definitely.
And you saw how conflicted he was about what his weapons were being used for.
When he realised what they were being used for, though, like, he had no idea. He's a weapons manufacturer who somehow at the start of Iron Man doesn't know that weapons kill people.
Well, that's the point. He's supposed to be kind of a jerk, and he's supposed to go on this journey of discovery and redemption.
I do see the arc there. And I think he's obviously a very, very different character now. In terms of where we are at with the whole universe at the minute. I think I have never liked Iron Man more in a movie I've seen him in than in Infinity War. Because I just think he's got rid of the sort of, like jerkiness is something. Or he's got rid of the arrogance a bit. I think it's the arrogance that puts me off. And it's why him and Cap have this back and forth.
So then how do you feel about Doctor Strange?
I don't like Doctor Strange at all. I think the movie's good, to be honest with you, but as a character, no.
But do you think Iron Man is more redeemable than
Absolutely,
Doctor Strange is? Okay.
Absolutely, I do. But I do think Doctor Strange has, admittedly, the coolest powers. I'm really into that. I just wish they weren't being used by someone so up themselves.
I think you just like the facial hair.
I do like Doctor Strange facial. I do like Tony Stark's facial hair.
See,
as well.
I would think that would impact your decision making.
Just because I like a man's facial hair, I don't think means I necessarily like him. There are some very bad men with very good facial hair. In history, for example.
We won't go into that.
I won't go into that, Starling. But again,
What did you think of the villain?
I'm all about Jeff Bridges. I like Jeff Bridges. I think the name Obadiah is incredible.
Also very obvious that he would become a villain.
Also very
with
obvious
a name
that
like
he would,
Obadiah Stane.
yeah, very, very obvious he would become a villain. But I mean, he is you said obviously that Tony has this arc in Iron Man, and he does. He's more redeemable in the latter half, whereas Obadiah Stane goes to where Tony might have done if he didn't have this little bit of heart, where he's just like, no, this company needs to carry on and carry on and carry on. And Stark's not about that anymore. So much.
So now that you have another villain that you haven't seen before, where would he rank? Because I know a lot of people talk about the MCU not having the best villains aside from Loki.
Yeah, I'm not one to rank things anyway, but I mean he's serviceable. He's a serviceable villain. He's a fairly unmemorable villain.
Okay.
It's also Iron Man fighting another Iron Man, which can get, it's like a problem like the Flash TV show has, where it's just the Flash fighting other fast people. And maybe later on with, I don't know, people had complaints about Black Panther, where it was Black Panther fighting another Black Panther. And yeah, but I think that movie was better. So that is what it is. I think that story was done better in that sense, so it didn't bother me as much there. But it didn't really, and not to say it bothered me really in Iron Man, because I thought Jeff Bridges was great. It's nice to see where, looking 10 years back at where the MCU is now and seeing how the influences were made really in Iron Man. How a lot of the stuff still carries across. It definitely feels like it's still part of this universe, but also it feels out of it enough. Obviously because it is an origin movie, but like some of the later origin movies, Ant-Man's, Doctor Strange's, they feel very, very MCU. I'm not sure that at this point they thought it was going to be quite as successful as it was. But yeah, I like it for feeling like a very, very standalone superhero movie. I don't know. It'd be nice to see where Iron Man goes in 2 and 3, because obviously I have no
Yeah.
I have no reason to think he will go any way in any of those movies. I know certain things about them, of course, but I don't know a great deal about where Tony himself goes throughout that time. But yeah, it's a really sort of, I don't know what your sort of highlight moments of Iron Man are.
I think this is the best we've seen Pepper Potts in any of the movies. I like their relationship. I like the build up to their relationship. I liked their chemistry in this one. I liked that she kind of had stuff to do at the end, that she was actually helpful and she wasn't just like, save me, save me.
Do you think that'll be the same in Endgame? Do you
I
think
think she
she'll
will
have a bit to do?
play a big part in Endgame.
A big part.
Well, a big part in either closing up his storyline or impacting his part of the story.
Well, I'm under sort of full belief that they're just going to go and retire on an island somewhere, the two of them, with their, because she's
With their
pregnant as well.
child,
With
Morgan.
their child.
Morgan.
Is that the name of their child?
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake.
We'll have to watch Infinity War again. They talked about naming the child after her Uncle Morgan or something like that.
It's
Which I think
not
is
me,
some
not-
kind
not-
of comic book Easter egg. So, and I think it's their crazy Uncle Morgan.
Course it is. Course it is. Why would it not be?
Yeah.
It would have to be crazy. I don't think I picked up on that. And if I did pick up on that in Infinity War, I forgot about it because Infinity War was jam-packed with a whole bunch of other more interesting things.
So, how did you feel about the Pepper and Tony dynamic?
I do like it. I do understand where you're coming from with the whole build-up of their relationship. I like how Pepper is his sort of most trusted confidant, and he ends up realising that, wait a minute, Pepper's a bit more than this girl who works for me. And it's nice. It's really kind of sweet in some parts. It does make you like Tony some more, which is good in my book because I think Tony needs every reason for me to try and like him. He needs more heart, and thankfully he's got more heart now. And I'm sure when he goes and retires with Pepper on an island and his kid, who he's gonna name Morgan, he'll have a lot of heart. He'll take over Captain America's heart because Captain America is dead.
Well, did you like that bit with his old heart and her like framing it and
did like that.
proof that Tony Stark has a heart and that's what he has to use in the end?
I did like that. I mean, Tony's heart is kind of a big point to this movie. It's kind of a big idea.
Yeah.
Of course, because basically the arc reactor is his heart to a point. It is what keeps him alive. And yeah, I like it's another really sweet sort of romance moment in the movie when Pepper has framed Tony's quote unquote heart.
So when he meets Jensen in the cave, he tells him, don't waste it. You have a second chance. Now seeing things that he's done in later movies, do you think he's wasted it?
Do I think Tony Stark has wasted being Iron Man, basically?
Being Iron Man, getting to redeem himself in some way, to better himself.
No, because I think he has bettered himself. I think he's had to go through obvious hardships in the way, and none more so than what happened in the last movie he was in. Which will, of course, come to an end in the movie we're capping this series off with, Avengers Endgame. But no, I think, he's not wasted it. Maybe not even in this movie, because he does a good deed in this movie by stopping Obadiah Stane and realising that his weapons are very, very destructive things, and that, let's focus on other things, not weapons. I also think this movie has a very 2000s feel to it, with the whole terrorism stuff and the Middle East stuff and the weapons of mass destruction stuff. Like, this clearly came out in 2008, and you can see it's nice to see because you don't often think about stuff that's this recent, that does have its sort of place in history. Even looking back 10 years, you can tell this is a movie made in the 2000s that could only really have been made this way in the 2000s.
Definitely.
So that's kind of cool. Yeah, I like Stan Lee's cameo as Hugh Hefner. That's always fun. I, of course, knew that one
Of
But
course.
yeah, it was nice to actually see it play out. And yeah, what else? I felt like I was going to say something else then. And I got on to talking about how it was a 2000s movie. And I completely forgot what I was talking about. That's a very frequent thing that happens on this particular podcast feed, is me forgetting what I'm going
Things.
to talk about. It's awful, Jeannine. It's awful. I mean, okay, so getting more of an idea on what you think about Iron Man as a character. I mean, where do you think he has come since this movie? What do you think has changed about him? Are you with me in the sense that he's developed a heart?
I feel like he has maybe backtracked slightly in the other movies. Like, I feel like a lot happened to change him in this movie, and it seemed very significant. And going down the line, it doesn't seem as significant.
I do think it's interesting, though, how he was seemingly very much the most affected by Sokovia.
Yeah.
In Avengers, in Ultron, obviously, and then Civil War. He was the one that seemed to realise just how much destruction they had caused, more so than the rest of them.
Well, when somebody corners you in the hallway and blames you for killing their child.
That is true.
And up until that point, he didn't really think about that.
Maybe Tony just needs the human connection. Maybe that's all he's missing, because that's what he's missing in this one. Once he sees what the weapons do to people, he realises, and then later on in Sokovia, once he realises that this has an effect on actual innocent people, he takes a stance against that. So maybe he just needs a little bit of a push sometimes, but it is kind of interesting to note that attitude hasn't changed all the way from Iron Man to Civil War. That he still sort of needs someone to
push him
a bit, which is it's interesting.
But he still has that undercurrent of being cocky and,
He does, and it's why
selfish, and
it's why I always gravitate towards Captain America. In terms of their opposite, I was very much a Team Cap when Civil War came out.
And that hasn't changed now. It hasn't where changed. Iron Man came from.
It hasn't. It hasn't changed now. I actually think I prefer the first Avenger to this movie. I really like the first Avenger. It's also a historical movie, so I'm about that sort of stuff. But
do you feel like you understand Tony Stark more?
I feel like I understand Tony Stark way more, which is really what this whole thing we're doing is about. Yeah. So yeah, I think that from that side, it's very, very worthwhile me watching Iron Man, and it's a great movie anyway. It's a really fun, entertaining superhero movie that, as I said before, does feel very standalone, and you could just throw on Iron Man and not have to worry about what comes after, what comes before, unless you're really focusing on particular stuff like, Phil Coulson turning up a few times and you watch the end credits with Nick Fury, but then obviously you know what's coming after that. But you don't really need to watch this with a focus on the surrounding universe like so many later MCU films sort of need to work.
Okay, well, just be prepared. In most opinions, it does descend a little bit.
I do know.
Of the Iron Mans, this is probably the best Iron Man.
It's a good place to start then.
Yes.
Now, I did want to bring up before we sort of start to wrap up a bit, this movie proper ends with I am Iron Man.
Yes.
which kind of threw me off a bit in terms of the context of the movie. Because obviously I know that quote. I have watched that scene before. I've seen enough memes of Iron Man to know that exact quote. But I think that him saying that after defeating Stain, after seemingly gaining more of a heart, it's showing that the arrogance hasn't gone. That he's just like, yeah, I am Iron Man. I'm going to do this, deal with it. Whereas Steve Rogers is never going to go about lauding the fact that he's Captain America. He just isn't. He is what he is, and he is. But
so, do you think that negates any of the progress of his arc, or do you think that's just still kind of giving you, like, the essence of the character? Because he's always going to be that to some extent.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's in there for. Because, you know, I said before that we see in Civil War that he still needs this push to realise that what he does affects human beings. And that this, you know, I Am Iron Man shows that, yes, he can do good things sometimes, but he is also very full of himself.
And he still wants everyone to know that he's the one doing all these wonderful things.
Exactly. And he still wants everyone to know that he is the one. Like, there's a big, you know, Stark Industries is a big skyscraper in New York for a reason.
Yeah.
He wants everyone to know his name. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's his own way of doing things. You can't say that in a lot of his stories, he has been quite a successful, quote-unquote, hero. To a point. But, yeah, it's purely the fact that it's very much a personal opinion, but it is purely the fact that he has this arrogance that I don't gravitate towards him as much as other characters in this whole universe.
See that. I mean, I feel like in that first opening scene with the troops, he kind of showed his cocky, he's rich, but very charming. Like, he was charming them and making them laugh, and that didn't make you even like him, like, slightly.
I mean, I just think Bruce Wayne does that sort of stuff a lot better.
Okay.
Which
Bruce Wayne?
Literally any Bruce Wayne. I just think Bruce Wayne plays the rich superhero a lot better than Tony Stark does. But I'm a DC guy, admittedly. So, yeah.
So you don't like to rank, but did this movie kind of like take over your liking for a movie you have seen in the MCU? Did you see this one and say, I kind of liked that more than...
I would say I liked it as a movie. Right, okay, let's make it easier. Let's go like origin movies, of which I have only seen this, First Avenger, you know, Doctor Strange, Ant-Man, Black Panther, Spider-Man. I would say maybe... No, in fact, let's not go that, because that's kind of hard. This is why I don't like ranking, Jeannine, because I can't do it. I'm incapable.
I told you I like making you do things you don't like to do.
Very, very cruel.
Push yourself.
Yeah, I've got to embrace my inner Iron Man. I would say this is a better movie than Doctor Strange. I would say it's see, I work very much off favourites. And I wouldn't call this like a favourite one. But in terms of a movie, it's still very good. Like, from the ones that I've seen, the MCU hasn't made a bad movie. Now, we're going to get onto some of the ones that are usually considered the weaker movies.
Yeah.
So, we'll get to that when we get to it. But it's difficult to rank things, especially when there are no objectively lesser movies or bad movies. I don't know. That's not an answer to the question that you give me, but it's the best one I have.
Okay. Just lastly, did you have expectations? And if so, did this meet any of them?
Did I have expectations? To be honest, I don't like having expectations anyway.
You don't like a lot of things.
I'm very difficult. I'm a very difficult movie watcher. Because I don't like to predict stuff either or anything like that. I also don't watch big trailers for big movies. I just don't, because it shows me too much things. For example, I haven't watched the Avengers Endgame trailer. And, you know, I'm not going
Shining
to
up
either.
that shame bell.
It's not a shame. Shameful for the people that watch every single TV spot. Pointless.
I know.
Deep analysis of a 3-second TV spot is ridiculous. I think the only expectations I think I had of Iron Man was that it would successfully show me how Iron Man came to be, how Tony Stark became Iron Man. I had no idea how that would happen, but I had the expectation that it would show me and it would all make sense to the character, it would make sense to the story it was being told in, and it did all that. I was maybe expecting a slightly better final battle. But
I think it did suffer the
That's
third
probably
act.
about it. Tony Stark as the character is very much what I expected him to be. Just because I don't necessarily like that doesn't mean I don't think he does this character well. Like, portrays him well. Like, I have nothing against Robert Downey Jr. I think Robert Downey Jr. does a great job as Tony Stark. It's not Downey Jr. that I don't particularly like, it's Stark himself. So, yeah, I think that's a nice place to sort of wrap up this first in this little... What are we calling it? Does it have a name, Jeannine?
No, I don't think it does yet.
It doesn't have
a name. I'm sure that'll be all sorted out.
Oh, so that was Jeannine's impression of me, in case anybody wasn't aware. Tell her what on earth. I don't know. I'm shocked.
It'll all be sorted.
I'm shocked and appalled, and I don't know what to do. Guys, this has been the start of a nice little MCU-based series here on the It's a Wonderful podcast feed. Quite different to the usual stuff you'll find on this feed, the usual show. But you can follow that show on Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Use the hashtag It's a Wonderful One to talk about the main show or this little one as well. Talk about Avengers and stuff like that with the hashtag It's a Wonderful One. Madness. Nobody knows what's going on anymore. It's insane. You can find the feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, Castbox, and any other one you might use, probably. I don't know. I don't check any of the other ones. Jeannine, you're just laughing at me now.
Sorry,
I don't know why.
Sorry.
But yeah, you can find it on all of those and leave the show your 5-star reviews, and we will read them out on the main show if they are written. Basically, I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say. Although I will finish on the fact that you can follow me on Twitter at the Purple Don with a 3 instead of the E in the, because 3 is the magic number. You can follow Jeannine the Machine. Jeannine the Machine. What are you getting up to at the minute? As you have, of course, done battle in the New York Schmodown live event recently. In a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you see the future. So
you're doing a lot of Schmodown stuff. You're a big
Schmodown.
star.
Yes, and I wouldn't go that far, but
I would.
I have Machine Mondays. It's an article on the Trivia Schmodown website, triviasd.com, so you can check that out every Monday. I have a t-shirt shop on TeePublic under G9 Design, letter G, number 9 Design. And you can find me on social media at Jeannine Dubbing, D-A, Dubbing. So, yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Guys, thank you for listening to this bit of MCU silliness. Until next week, I guess, when we are doing Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
I don't have Nolan here to see us out. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to end. Jeannine.
Don't look at me.
Bye, guys.